Living in Infamy by J.G. Follansbee. Scripture says that one day the sea will give up its dead. What the dead do in the meantime is anyone's guess. Gus Alston's thoughts lingered on 129 dead. They were never far from his mind, comrades entombed underneath his keel at the bottom of the Arctic Ocean. As he scanned the horizon with binoculars, puffs of sea smoke on the water drifted around his ship like funeral pyres. The brass said, "I didn't kill them, but I will never escape blame." The sailors burdened him and his family like an unhealed wound, though another man, dead for a century, was a constant companion to Gus, like a second soul. "I'd conjure you, dear uncle, if I could, and beg you to fight with me." Sonar contact. The automated text from the ship's AI appeared in Gus's networked mind's eye. The impulses interpreted as images by his occipital lobe danced and flickered. The autodoc says it's the obsolete network equipment, not my implants. Gus reached for the squawk button on the bridge of the fast attack destroyer USS Jose M. Perez. 5-degree air seeped past his close-cropped gray hair onto his neck and down his spine. "Report." "Alvarez here, sir. It's another false echo." "Jesus, Christine, that's the third one this watch." "A good ping jockey, if inexperienced." "What's the problem?" "This gear is older than I am, sir. I'm on the backup as it is, but I'm pretty sure something's out there. I'm doing the best I can." "I know you are. Keep at it." Alvarez was at the top of her class in sonar school, but no commander could expect her to find sophisticated oil smugglers with equipment that Gus had trained on at OCS 2 decades ago. His executive officer, Tony Bridger, lay his hand on the bridge rail. Through the steam fog, the lights of a hamlet hugged a bay to port. "I love this ship as much as you do, sir, but it's falling apart. Isn't it the oldest in U.S. Ark Fleet? Why doesn't DOD retire it?" Gus grimaced at the word love, but it would be unseemly for him as its master to reveal his true feelings about his ship. "We need the Joe MP to find these subs, Tony. They're carrying contraband as defined by the carbon laws. Fossil fuels may be banned, but they're still a big business." In his imagination, Gus pictured the smuggler's boat, assuming it was out there somewhere. Of that, he was sure. Smuggling was endemic. An all-civilian crew, maybe ex-submariners, terrified, desperate, with no escape except success. Breaking the law, but not deserving an instant death by crushing, if he had to attack them. What if they want to surrender but can't? A decade ago, the sailors on the USS Santa Fe had no time to surrender once Gus sent that Mark 51 torpedo to kill them. A 3-day war at the top of the world, and I stood not 5 meters from this spot and caused 30% of U.S. casualties. Sonar contact. The XO pressed the squawk key. "Report, sonar." "I'm sorry, sir, another falsie, but I still think there's a bogey out there. The ocean doesn't sound right." Tony acknowledged the sonar tech. "Alvarez is nervous, Captain, but good God, we've got enough falsies to supply all the horrors at Archangel." The XO's joke missed its mark because Gus was daydreaming, a bad habit to distract himself from boredom and tension. What would Uncle Percy do? 100 years ago, Captain Percival Alston could never have sailed these waters off the Russian Arctic coast. Even if his submarine had the range, it couldn't break the year-round ice. He would have chased the Japanese here anyway. He would have put together a wolf pack. Sonar contact. Gus and Tony looked at each other, as if debating which one should start the ritual. Gus touched the intercom button. "Report." "This one's different, sir, but do you have a bearing?" "That's what I mean, Captain. It's got 2 bearings. Like there's 2 targets, but at least give me a general direction." "Northeast?" "Toward the headland." Gus lifted his binoculars to his eyes, and the ship's comm fed map information, topographies, settlements, even marine traffic to his mind's eye implants. Another light, not on the maps, away from the town's lights, and, unlabeled by the AI, blinked. New nav beacon? The database is probably out of date again. Marine agencies couldn't keep up with the growing traffic on the new Arctic sea lanes. Gus watched the light for a moment, discerning a pattern like an open text code. Strange for a nav beacon. It sat on a long, low, fuzzy silhouette, maybe a cluster of rocks. He didn't get the time to figure it out. General quarters, all hands man your battle stations. General quarters, General, the audible alarm in the recorded voice augmented the mind's eye warning to all 250 men and women aboard the ship. Bridge, torpedo on the water, sir. What the fuck? Say again? Confirmed, sir. Tony Bridger's voice was tense but calm. Damned good, XO. Where in hell did it come from? I'm trying to sort that out, sir. Helm, right full rudder, all ahead full. I'd like Tony better if it weren't for his daddy. Commander Augustus Gup J. Alston III nearly spat in the eye of his boss, Rear Admiral Maximilian Bridger, for giving the ship to him. The fucker assigned me to a floating scrap heap and called it a promotion. Gus switched channels in his mind's eye. Countermeasures? Maybe I deserved it after what happened in the war. Full slate on its way, sir. New surface warfare officer, competent, cautious. Monica Jansen enunciated her words like a machine gun stutter. Gus heard the rockets fire, but didn't hear the splashes. The Joe heeled over as her rudder bit. Gus ordered a new course and felt the destroyer accelerate, her twin props stirring the sea like a blender. Still got a kick in her. Smoke poured out of her stacks, a sight that would have given fits to the environmental security bureaucrats back home, if it weren't for the military exemption and the carbon laws. Practically no one else could use crude oil and its derivatives for anything. Not that the law stopped a determined user, or a smuggler. Smugglers don't attack, they run, unless cornered. Time to impact? Tony came back. 3, 2, 1... Gus braced himself, but nothing happened. The fish is still running, sir, Alvarez said. Lots of Doppler, punch-drunk confused. A pause. Silence, sir. EOL. Gus breathed out. End of life. For the torpedo. As far as the weapon's AI was concerned, the acoustic signals from the countermeasure buoys were an armada of ships on the surface, and it could only attack one. Gus's orders took the Joe out of danger. Got a backtrack, Captain. Tony was on it. And a bearing. Still got another echo, probably an artifact. 90% confidence on the bogey's position, sir. Attack orders? Gus flashed to the war. Too much confidence. My arrogant confidence. 10 years had passed since he stood on this bridge as the SWO, and within spitting distance of the North Pole. Pulled out of mothballs, the Joe MP and a flotilla of Allied ships were protecting a civilian science platform when a navigation error 500 meters below fucked it all up. They called it the 3 Degrees North War, a slaughter with automated weapons. The Joe fired only once in anger, and Gus Alston killed 129 sailors aboard USS Santa Fe with a torpedo. I thought it was Chinese. 110% confidence. Who am I shooting at now? We're losing contact, sir. Tony was impatient. Your orders. Alvarez came on. Sir, I've lost contact. The artifact, too. Gus was grateful for the chance to pause and think. Stand down from general quarters. Tony, sir, we've got a right to defend ourselves. We don't have to defend ourselves right this second. I won't repeat myself, XO. You can reacquire and follow it, but not attack it. I need help, and I want to know more. That evening in his cabin, Gus swiped through the preliminary after-action reports on the encounter with the smuggler. The recirculated air smelled of bunker oil and burnt toast from the morning's crew's mess. Tony Bridger looked on, sipping a single-serving Java from Gus's own reserve. Ideas, Tony? I'm fresh out. I've got the ops team working on it, sir. We'll have something for you in the next couple of hours. The Joe MP stalked the smuggler after Alvarez managed to reacquire it. The pesky artifact also reappeared, but it was deemed non-threatening. Deep in thought, Gus interlaced his fingers at the back of his neck. staring at a black and white photo on the wall above his XO. The uniformed man in the photo had twinkling eyes, a fetching grin, and he wore his Navy cap in a non-regulation way that had melted Gus's heart for nearly 40 years. Behind him was his first command, the Gatto-class sub USS Grail. A brass plate on the frame read, Commander Percival Alston, Pearl Harbor, January 23, 1943. Tony followed his captain's gaze. He's a relative, right, Gus? In private, the officers could speak to each other on a first-name basis. Not so in the presence of crew. The brother of my three greats-grandfather. Those guys had balls. Tony indicated the photo with his thumb. Stalking prey 100 feet down in a one-eyed, hard-of-hearing sardine can? No submariners in my family, I'm afraid. Did he survive the war? No, he didn't make it. Too bad. I wonder what he would do in our situation. Gus guessed what Percy Alston would have wanted to do. When he tried it, it went all wrong, and now my family hates him. Gus shifted his thoughts away from the photo in the distant past. Tony, I need to kick this problem upstairs, at least for some advice. No smuggler has attacked a U.S. surface ship in this way before. I see. Tony nodded. U.S. Ark Fleet? Let's not beat around the bush. I'll have to talk to your father. Tony was impassive, but Gus understood if his XO felt the need to hide a spike of anxiety. You're my second, and I'd like you in the room, but I think I'd better do the talking. Aye, sir. Tony let out a sigh. I'm sorry that this has to be so awkward. I know you and the Admiral. Never mind that, Tony. Let's just cover our bases. Later, when the holodisplay lit up in Gus's cabin, his palms sweat like a delinquent ordered to the principal's office. To the jowly Maximilian Bridger, every explanation was an excuse. Alston, it's just another oil smuggler. Force him to the surface, take the crew, and we'll do the rest. Bridger's sun-mottled skin was tinged pink with annoyance. Gus cleared his throat. What I'm saying, Admiral, is that this one is different. If you'll look at the slide labeled Target Profile, the Admiral sighed and fumbled for the sheet. An aide's hand and cuff-link sleeve reached into view and pointed it out to him. On the Joe MP, the Admiral's son waited for a question from Anchorage, though the elder officer barely acknowledged the son when the meeting started. It was hard for Gus to avoid the extra tension. It's a new configuration, Admiral. One, it's unbelievably fast underwater. Top speed, maybe 50 knots. It must look like a sewing needle. I don't think the crew can stand up in it. 2, it's defending itself with a high-quality ordnance. Its torpedo almost beat our best countermeasures. Yes, Alston, I can read. Gus paused to let the Admiral catch up. Settling his eyes on Percy Alston's photo, he wondered if his superiors ever frustrated him. One day, when Gus was 12 and messing around in his father's mother's attic, he knocked over a cardboard box, and as he frantically tried to put everything back, he found the photo. He was instantly captivated. The box also contained copies of Percy's after-action reports, long ago declassified, of patrols in USS Grail. The last one was dated December 5th, 1942. His grandma called them rubbish that ought to be burned, but she let Gus take everything home. Gus devoured the reports, which read like Homeric poems. He marked the patrol routes on a map, labeled his ancestors' kills, and knew all the crew members' names. I followed him around like a puppy. He was funny, warm, irreverent. Gus took to calling him Uncle Percy when he was alone with the fraying pieces of paper. One sheaf was odd and out of character. The 12-year-old boy set it aside, but the 22-year-old student at Officer Candidate School remembered it. The paper was titled, Potential Adoption of German U-Boat Tactics. Are you there, Alston? I'm waiting. Gus cleared his throat. Three, the testy flag officer interrupted. This new situation proves that our whole team is doing its job. The criminals are trying to outsmart us, but we have bigger guns and better people. That is, most of us are better people. Gus's blood pressure rose. and he had to jab his fingernail into the soft flesh between his thumb and forefinger to keep himself from exploding in rage. He gave up years ago, hoping Admiral Bridger would forgive him for his error during the war. The death of Max Bridger's sister aboard Santa Fe shamed the Admiral, so said Tony Bridger in an offhand remark at the Officers' Club in Anchorage. Why hasn't Tony asked for a transfer? It must be hell working for a captain his father hates. Sir, I agree we can beat this threat, but I need help. What kind of help? The Warren Jackson is 500 kilometers from here. She's new and can take on anything. We can rendezvous at our estimate of the bogey's position 3 days from now and bring the bastard up together. What do you need our best destroyer for? O'Malley's my best commander. You want the credit. I won't have it. He's not playing second fiddle to anyone, particularly you. This is about risk reduction, information gathering, and completing the mission, sir. Risk reduction. Your job is to take risks. Believe it or not, we're trying to save the planet, Captain Alston. The Bureau of Environmental Security and the Navy have formed a strategic partnership, so the speech begins. Again. Gus noticed Tony, off camera, roll his eyes, and Gus likewise tuned out the Admiral's nasal voice, involuntarily substituting his father's. John Alston, Gus's old man, liked to lecture as well, often within minutes of walking in the door after another one of his long deployments, at least before he made Vice Admiral. Gus figured he stopped touching his sons within days of them learning to walk, because Gus, the younger of the pair, never remembered a hug or a ride on his father's shoulders. Mom would line Phil and I up in front of the door. He'd walk in, we'd salute, and he'd shake our hands. Phil first, always. Don't need to remind you about the chain of command, Alston. For almost 3 centuries, inevitably when the boy's father was home, Phil got the praise and Gus got the criticism, in equal measure. Phil was smarter. Naval Academy, Silicon Valley marriage, while I got OCS and a divorce. Gus's mother reassured him that his father loved him, but a month later he was out the door, never explaining where he was going or how long he'd be gone. Will not be tolerated. Is that clear, Alston? Aye, sir. Gus wasn't sure what he'd agreed to, but he didn't care. I'm going to say one more thing to you, Alston, off the record for now. Sir, the Admiral lowered his voice to a menacing whisper, you had better show more aggression, or I will personally order an investigation into your conduct, and you do not want to go where it will lead me. Is that clear? Perfectly, sir. It's perfectly clear to me that you are an incompetent bully. Agreed, sir. Fleet out. The holoscreen went dark. Gus leaned back in his chair and covered his face with his hands, as if a soldier laid a cloth over a dead comrade's face to give the corpse a little dignity. Tony breathed out as if he had dived to the bottom of a swimming pool and stayed as long as possible before coming up. He folded his arms. I'm guessing we have to work this problem on our own. Good guess, Tony. Gus was grateful the younger man never took sides in the Alston-Bridger war. He did his job, obeyed Gus's orders, and deserved the respect of the crew. Gus easily saw him taking his father's place some day at Fleet. The XO lowered his eyes. The man is such an asshole. Tony, that's not the way to speak about a superior officer. Gus's tone was ironic, not scolding. Oh, the Admiral is a fine, upstanding officer, a credit to the service, Tony huffed. As a father, he's the biggest asshole on the planet. When we were in Sea Scouts, he once demoted me in front of all my friends. A shadow crossed Tony's face. Maybe not the biggest asshole. In the summer of Gus's 13th year, his father was home, and the officer found his son rereading one of Percy Alston's reports. Son, he said, in his grave baritone, I need to tell you something about that man. He gestured at the papers. Gus brightened. Here was a chance to make a connection with his father. They had something in common, an ancestor. Other fathers and sons shared football or networked games, or they flew model lunar shuttles. Your great-great-great-grandfather's brother was a reckless, incompetent, drunken womanizer. Gus was dumbstruck. If he hadn't been killed in the war, his father would have disowned him. John Alston paused. As it was, he died a hero in the eyes of the U.S. government, and after we said goodbye, the family never spoke of him again. Gus wanted to argue that when Uncle Percy came back from his fourth 1942 patrol with more tonnage sunk than any other sub-captain, the War Department sent him out on a tour to sell war bonds. John laid his small hands on his son's shoulders. I know I'm not the best father, Gup, but treating Percival Alston like a hero is like saying Batman has a clear conscience. That last bit hurt because Gus loved Batman. When his father left the room, the child cried as if the man was the officer delivering news of a loved one's death in combat. Gus didn't understand why his father hated Uncle Percy until the 3 Degrees North War. What do we do now, Captain? The Joe's XO said. Gus sighed. Get back to work. Tony grunted. We're constantly updating an intercept vector. The antique sonar equipment is still giving us weird artifacts, but we're fairly confident. I'll order... We need help, Tony. Where are we going to find it? Another knock on Gus's door, more insistent. Come. Jansen, the SWO, stepped partly in and noted the XO's presence. Excuse us, Captain, Mr. Bridger, may we come in? Alvarez and I wanted you to see something. We thought it was urgent. Tony made room, though the enlisted women remained standing. All right, what is it? A solution, I hope. Jansen hesitated, looking from the XO to Gus. We've studied the AI telemetry communications from the bogey to the fish. We think I can reprogram it, sir, Alvarez interrupted. Gus and Tony exchanged looks. Is that possible? How? I know this critter, the AI. It's kind of like a tricycle that you give to a little kid to get her used to the idea of a bike. The software's been modified, but it's simple. The boat's telemetry package has got a security hole big enough to drive a carrier through. I can get into the sub's comm systems and knock out the bugger, maybe even tell it to surface and give us all a kiss. She laughed a little, but the others didn't join her. Gus was skeptical. In the years since the incident, he had studied artificial intelligence down to the basic if-then-else statements, mostly to understand what went wrong on that first day of the 3 Degrees North War. His hard work was noticed, and he managed to crawl out of his career hole. The ping jockey and SWO watched Gus and waited. He knew the look. A monster had tried to kill them, their friends, and their home. They had a chance to fight back. Nonetheless, Gus saw worry in Jansen's face. What are the risks? We have to get close, almost on top of it. Last time we did that, Tony finished the thought. It nearly took us out. Gus had an idea. What about this false echo you keep seeing, Christine? Do you think the bogey sees it too? Alvarez shrugged. Hard to tell, sir. Could be our poor equipment, could be natural. The Arctic Ocean is the least explored of all the seas. In his photo, Captain Percival Alston smirked, as if he knew something Gus didn't and wasn't telling. He took his share of secrets to his grave somewhere in the Aleutian Islands, along with 80 officers and crew. Grayling disappeared without a trace in March 1943. One secret was revealed in a letter among the papers Gus found. Percival Alston wrote it to his brother, Gus's 3 greats grandfather, a year before he left Pearl on his last patrol. It's everyone for himself. No one wants to work together. The Germans got it. The wolf pack, teamwork. They chewed our asses off in 41 working in groups. Why don't we hunt like that? I've begged everyone in Com Sub Pack to try it with me. 2 boats are good, 3 is best, but no one wants to share the glory. What the hell are we fighting for? Just for ribbons and to impress a dame? The other secret, the one that shamed his family, came out eventually, though the Navy kept it classified until long after everyone involved had passed on. Gus found the report while on desk duty after his war. Without authorizations, Uncle Percy had tried Wolfpack tactics on his next-to-last patrol, the one that ended in December of '42. It was a disaster. On the first coordinated attack, one of Grailing's torpedoes sank another pack boat, drowning the captain and a dozen sailors. The third sub barely escaped a Japanese counterattack. How Percy kept his command after that was a mystery, though Gus surmised someone up the chain had tacitly agreed to the test and decided to protect himself and Percy Alston. Then Percy died. Damn it, man, you were right. The Navy tried again in the East China Sea in October 1943, but it was considered a failure, despite sinking 3 Japanese ships. The Navy worried the subs might fire on each other again. If you'd lived, Percy, you would have made it work. What would you do now in my place? Gus and the Joe MP were alone, but maybe he could fake it. Gus looked at Alvarez and Jansen. Dismissed. You too, Tony. The XO was in the hallway, but turned back. Gus looked up from the holodisplay. Yes? Captain, I'd like to say, well, this is difficult. What happened to Santa Fe back in the war? When I was at Annapolis, I had to read that report for my senior project. I remember looking at the cover, your name on it, and I almost spat on it. My father had told me all about it, how you killed his sister. I believed him. Tony let out a breath. But I read that thing, sir, and even the investigators said it wasn't your fault. I did my own calculations, showed the AI code to my friends, and they all agreed it wasn't your fault, Captain. It just wasn't. Tony bit his lip and departed. Gus blessed his XO for closing the door, because he might have seen his welling tears. Tony's words carried a measure of forgiveness, a measure not unlike the absolution Gus offered Percy Alston, absolution that the rest of his family found impossible to bestow. Percy Alston failed catastrophically, though he deserved credit for trying to find a better way to defeat the enemy. Instead, he was only blamed for killing fellow sailors. My family carries his error as shame, and it's damned unfair to Percy. Gus felt good. The bone in the Joe's teeth was as white as the ice floes that once capped the Arctic Ocean year-round. Her crew had a workable plan that fulfilled her mission. If they succeeded, every swabby from the Joint Chiefs on down would know about it. Maybe I can clear my name. If they failed. Gus's enemy was heading for the Catacombs, a stretch of the Siberian coast infamous for its intricate bays and inlets, opened up by the melting ice and rising sea levels. Practically roadless, the area was ideal as a smuggler's haven. If the boat made it there, the Joe MP couldn't follow. Gus paced his bridge. Time to intercept? He'd asked that question 3 times in the past 20 minutes. It annoyed the bridge crew, but that was the least of his worries. 30 minutes now, sir. Tony was matter-of-fact. Gus went over every detail in his head again. Alvarez was cocksure. Jansen fidgeted. Tony was completely on board. Sonar contact. Alvarez? Aye, sir, it's the beast. The echo's there, too. Damnedest thing. How much longer? We'll need to be within 1,000 meters, sir. A moment, sir. It's changing course. That was expected. Match at helm. Get us closer. I want that false echo on the other side of the bogey. Make him think he's getting pinched. Make him hesitate. Gus balled his fists. Jansen, don't wait too long. Let me know as soon as you're ready. He forced patience on himself. 10 seconds, sir. The bridge was silent as the Joe sped forward, nothing but a flat sea to the horizon. In range, sir. I'm ready. Execute. A second later, Jansen said, Done, sir. The feeling was anticlimactic. Unlike firing a torpedo or a deck gun, Jansen had executed a script that attacked the sub's security flaw, then inserted Alvarez's custom malware. No one on Joe MP had any idea what would happen next. With Tony at his side, Gus counted to 3. In those 3 beats, he was no longer the commander of the Joe MP. He was the young SWO in the midst of a shooting war at the top of the world. Whom will I kill now? Gus let 3 more seconds pass. Anything, sonar? Jansen? Nothing, sir. Hold on a moment. Wait. Oh, that's not... Oh, shit. What is it? Gus was ready to explode. Alvarez, report. Enemy torpedo. Torpedo on the water. Oh, God. Oh, God. What have I done? Right full rudder. All ahead flank. Countermeasures. That bugger will be on top of us before I can take my next breath. Deployed. Gus saw the rockets carrying the acoustic buoys light up all around the Joe MP, but one rocket sputtered and fell just 10 meters off her beam. In the meantime, a thick fog enveloped the ship, but Gus had no time to chew out meteorologies for failing to warn him. The explosion lifted the ship almost completely out of the water. Time slowed to a crawl, and Gus was certain he heard the keel crack. His ship would split in half like a twig and go down with all hands, disappearing like the Santa Fe. I've screwed the pooch twice. The concussion took everyone's feet out from under them, and he cried out in shock and pain. The Joe settled back into the water like a kid stopping himself on a trampoline. Damage report. Tony was in control. Text and images flowed into Gus's mind's eye, but as the seconds passed, no one reported flooding, except for a turned-over pot of water in the galley. Why aren't we dead? Jansen here, sir. The enemy torpedo detonated under the acoustic buoy that fell short. A few meters closer, and we would have been cut in half. It's a miracle we're still here. No one on the bridge was seriously hurt, though the Joe's boilers were offline. The crew was alive, but the ship was dead in the water. A sitting duck. Sonar, where's the bogey? Damn it, man, where is my enemy? I don't see it, sir. It's disappeared. Same with the echo. Sir, look, is that an oil slick? The entire bridge crew, Gus included, forgot discipline and rushed to a window. A few meters off the ship's beam was a thick blanket of black oil on the water's surface, visible despite the fog. A cheer went up on every deck. We killed it! Beaming, Tony took his captain's hand and shook it. Congratulations, sir. Stand by to pick up survivors. Gus gave the order, but he could hardly believe the news. He wanted to celebrate, but he held back. He wasn't a junior officer anymore. He was a man who wanted to understand and learn. Wait, Tony. The malware was designed to bring the bogey to the surface. It didn't work. The monster attacked us. Something else happened. I'm just relieved that it's gone and we're alive. Bridge, sonar. Captain, I really need to talk to you. You won't believe what I'm hearing, what I heard. Another shout came from the deck, distracting Gus from answering, and a swarm of parka-covered arms pointed astern. Gus stepped out onto the bridge wing, where the fog hung clammy as the skin of a drowned corpse. Gus and Tony lifted binoculars at the object, a blinking light atop a smudged outline of a structure. Gus lowered his glasses. I've seen that light before, XO. Where, sir? When we were off that headland. The light's blinking like a signal lamp. Christ, maybe that's it. How's your Morse? Well, tell me what you're reading. Gus needed a sanity check. I make it out as, do you need assistance? Jansen, what are you seeing? Surface radar's out, sir. Working on it. Fire control radar is showing no bogeys. Alvarez, behind you, sir. Gus turned around and saw the young woman, and he was about to bark at her for leaving her post, but the specialist was white as a sheet. What is it, Christine? Sir, that object, I don't know what it is, but it attacked the smuggler too. Gus squinted in disbelief. What are you talking about? There's no other warships in the area. It's getting closer, sir, Tony said. Strange profile. Captain, please, sir, I need to tell you this. Please let me explain. Christine Alvarez wore a regulation-sized crescent moon religious pendant. We confused the bogey, but we didn't kill it. Explain. I heard something else. Alvarez sighed and looked away. You'll think I'm crazy, sir. For Christ's sake, Christine, I had to check. I had to link into the U.S. Fleet archives to find it. The sound, I mean. Sir, it was the motor of a Mark 18 torpedo. What? That is not possible. Whatever that thing is, it's starting to come out of the fog, Tony said. No doubt, Captain. The prop and motor sounds match the profile perfectly. It can't be true, Christine. The Navy hasn't used that model for more than 100 years. Since World War II, for God's sake. It's like the Joe using a muzzle-loading cannon. I'm sorry, sir. I must be wrong, but the fish, the Mark 18, hit the bogey. Then the echo went, Captain Alston, I think Miss Alvarez might be correct, Tony said. Gus turned back to the object. It emerged from the fog, its color nearly matching the gray of the sea's surface, a long, lean predator, its bow planes stowed, its conning tower reaching up toward the featureless sky, but only as high as the Joe's weather deck. The vessel made no sound as it slid past, and no smoke poured from its exhaust, and it generated no wake. The only sign of life was the blink of the signal lamp. He's still asking if we need assistance, Captain. He? I assume there's an officer directing things. Gus wondered if he should assume such a thing. He knew that silhouette, and it did not belong on the surface of the Arctic Ocean. Gus focused on the bridge. The light blinked, but no one was working the vanes. He examined the flat expanse of the tower above the submarine's deck, and he made out the identification number. Gus lowered his glasses. I am hallucinating. I've got a concussion, and I'm in sickbay, and I'm seeing things. Is this a delusion, or a guilty man's wish come true? Sir, look amidship, Alvarez pointed. Reluctantly, Gus directed his gaze a little behind the conning tower at the waterline. A hole, roughly circular, 3 or 4 meters across, extending below the waterline, the steel on the edges turned in like a dried fragment of orange peel. The hole penetrated the outer and inner hulls, showing a mangled inner deck with a room and a table. The officer's wardroom. A direct hit. Everyone killed instantly. The boat goes down like a rock. How does it stay afloat with damage like that? Alvarez said. The signal's changed, sir, Tony said. My Morse is rusty, but I read it as, thanks for setting up the kill, Gup. We make a great team. Do you know what it means? Gus swallowed. He doffed his cap to wipe the sweat off his brow. The nickname, the Mark 18 torpedo, and the ID number, 209, meant only one thing. Grailing, or its specter, was the false echo, the persistent shadow. He knew about the monster, and he knew I was after it. The boat is repeating its offer of assistance, Captain. Gus stared at the rail of his bridge. He had nowhere else to rest his eyes. If he looked at the grailing again, he might cry out or faint or ask Tony to take over before he did anything stupid. My compliments to the captain, XO, but politely decline. I'm going below. Compliments to the captain. Gus laughed out loud when he closed the door to his cabin. The laughter was followed by tears of relief, then tears of terror because he feared he was losing his mind. He sat in his office chair and studied Percival Alston's face, the twinkling eyes, the knowing smile, the dimple on his chin, the one the ladies liked. Uncle Percy, you son of a bitch. Dead 100 years, but you're here? Why? Because I forgave you? Because now I can forgive myself? A few months later, the José M. Perez was mothballed for the final time, and Gus Alston retired from the Navy, but not before he and the entire crew received a presidential citation for chasing down the smuggler violating the carbon laws. Officially, the enemy submarine steered itself into an underwater mountain, but the details of the report were classified. No one on the Joe MP that day spoke the truth of what they saw to anyone, not even each other, because they valued their careers and their reputations. Rumors persisted for years, however, across the Arctic, of a ghost submarine, her spectral captain, and the ship they saved from destruction. You've been listening to Living in Infamy by J.G. Follansbee, read by the author. Copyright 2016. All rights reserved.